of developing your drawing skills is looking at experimental drawing techniques. So what I'm going to show you today are 8 really good, what I feel are really effective experimental drawing techniques that you can practice to develop your drawing, to take your drawing, if you're a beginner, to a new level, to understand how to create marks, more experimental marks, and just see what type of effects you can create in your work and become a more accomplished artist as you begin to apply these techniques to your work. To think about mark making and what mark making in art and design actually is. It's about how artists create lines, marks and patterns in their drawings and use them to create more effective design work. So this can be linked very directly to experimental drawing techniques, because it really does enable you to create a wide variety and array of marks in your work using a variety of techniques. Now, one of the first techniques I was shown as an art student was the technique of blind drawing, and this can be quite an effective technique for creating different qualities of line in your work. And the way you do it is you just focus, drawing from observation, you focus on the object and begin to create marks and lines and shapes in your drawing whilst you focus purely on the act of observation and drawing. You don't you resist that temptation of actually to check your work, to go back to your work, to alter it in some way. You keep the focus on looking at the object and drawing as you actually produce these marks. And this will create a very sort of fluid type of drawing and will give your drawings a real sense of freedom. It's quite experimental, so you can try this. It's quite a quick technique, fast technique, and you can produce many drawings using this method. And alternatively, again, you can create different drawings using a variety of media. You don't just have to stick to pencil. You can use ink, you can use pen, you can use paint, you can use chalk to create these types of drawings. Now the next technique I want you to focus on is a technique called negative space drawing. Now again, this technique is great when you're looking at things directly in front of you, drawing from observation, be it a figure, a still life or a landscape. What I want you to focus on are the spaces created by objects or in between objects, say for example between the arm and the torso, or between a number of arranged objects in a still life. Focus on these spaces and draw them. You can overlap them, you can leave them in isolation, and this is a really good way for you to create marks and create shapes in your work experimentally, to create more dynamic compositions. It's a really good way of developing that skill in your work. So again, it's an act of observation. Look at what you're drawing, look at those spaces, study what analytically what you're looking at from life. It's an excellent technique to use with figure drawings and architectural space drawings, for example, out on location. And it can produce some quite effective work. Again, you can use a variety of materials to produce these types of drawings. You don't have to restrict yourself to pencil. You can use different mark making items, chalks, ink and things like that. It will create very expressive work if you're willing to push the boundaries and use different types of media. Technique of obviously hand drawing is thinking about how you actually use your arm and your shoulder, and drawing directly from the shoulder or the elbow when you're drawing, and not being tempted to just draw with your wrist. Again, This will give you a different type of quality in your drawings and give you a freedom to produce different types of shapes and marks on the paper. So just try to, in this particular technique, just focus on drawing from the shoulder, arm extended, or from the elbow, and just seeing what type of marks you can create, just restricting yourself to that type of movement in the work. Again, there's no hard and fast rules with this. You don't have to restrict yourself with media. Try to produce experimental, aesthetically pleasing work using a variety of different types of media, and the focus here is on breaking boundaries and trying to create a variety of mark making techniques using this method. Now, similar to drawing from your elbow or your shoulder is to draw with your arm directly extended in front of you without bending it. Again, this is quite an experimental way of working, and you can take this even a step further by taking a long stick, putting a pen or a pencil at the end of it, and really just extending your arm and working at quite a distance from the paper. And again, you will find that this will create very, very experimental types of marks on the paper, which are quite decorative and give you a very, very different types of fluidity in your drawing. It's again, it's an experimental approach, and you can try it with different types of media. So again, as with all of these techniques, don't restrict yourself. Try and be experimental. If you find that something's working for you, stay with it and see how it goes. Technique is that of opposite hand drawing. So for example, if you usually draw with your right hand and you're right-handed and you're used to drawing with that hand, swap to your opposite hand, and you will see when you try this that you will create very, very different styles of drawing and a different quality of aligning your work. So it is an experimental technique which is very effective, especially when you're developing work with students or you're a beginner and you're looking to just give an extra dimension to your drawing, because you will find there's a fluency and a freedom in the type of drawings that you can produce with your opposite hand, because the amount of control that you have with that drawing is quite different, and the feeling that you have, the tactile quality of the drawings is very different when you're using your opposite hand. So again, this is a technique which is widely used in art schools. And again, you can use different methods. You can don't have to just restrict yourself to a pencil. You can again try different techniques and different drawing materials, and think about your subject. Again, this is an excellent subject if you're drawing from direct observation with life drawings, for example. Techniques or experimental drawing techniques that we've looked at in this clip are dealing with mark making and tactile sensations. So the next experimental technique that I'd like you to focus on, or maybe attempt, is that of tactile or touch drawing. Now again, this is something I learned quite a long time ago when I was in art school, was basically to put an object, a tactile object which has a texture to it, in a dark bag, enclose that bag, and then just touch and feel the object, and then produce your drawings from imagination whilst you're actually touching and feeling it. And the whole sensation of that the tactile quality of the object you're trying to imagine or draw is produced on the paper. So it's quite a different technique, and it can produce some quite interesting drawings. So it's really down here to the artist's imagination and how they respond to the sensation of the textural qualities of their object they're trying to draw. So placing an object in a bag, covering it so you don't have any visual reference, touching it, feeling it, looking at it, feeling those tactile qualities, and then trying to respond to that on the paper. This could be a purely abstract approach to working. You don't have to create a representation of the object. In fact, this is probably better if you ask somebody to put in an object that you've never looked at inside a bag, and your response will be purely imaginative, and you can then revert to looking at different artistic techniques or styles. I know when I tried this, I produced quite sort of cubistic type drawings based on the sort of hard-edged quality of some of the objects I'm trying to draw, and this led me to create almost abstract cubist quality work through this drawing method. So it's well worth attempting. It's highly experimental, and it can again produce some quite interesting results as an experimental drawing technique. Experimental drawing is maybe try to produce imaginative drawings. Now this is something that's personal to the artist and the person who's creating these drawings, so just think about what you would like to draw and try and produce marks or create marks on the paper or lines and patterns purely from imagination, and just see where you end up. This is a valid way of working, and it's a good way for you to just create a variety of marks down on the paper and get them down on the paper. Use a sketchbook to do this, work on different scales and just work purely imaginatively. Just see what you can end up with.